Hello and welcome to Wake Up. Grand rising to you wherever you are watching us, whether it's the dead of night or it's first thing in the morning. Thank you for being here. This is not welcome. This is Wake Up with Sonia Poulton and guests. I'm Sonia Poulton, as you may guess. Welcome to the show that knows if you always keep your face to the sun, the shadows will fall behind you. Oh, yes, indeed. Welcome to another week. Thank you for being here. Good morning from Plumstead, says Harry. How are you all? We are a truly global show. Yes, we are. What is on Wake Up today? We'll be joined by Dr. David Hughes. He'll be talking to us about the digital state, something that should be of concern to all of us. And also comedian Tania Edwards will be dropping by for a news chat and talking to us about her news show. And we'll be looking at migrant protests and the government proving conspiracy theorists right. Oh, yes. And the outing of ex-grifters. Oh, it's so joyous to see. And the assisted dying bill is, well, to put it bluntly, dying in the UK. And hurrah for that from many of us. Plus, the C19 inquiry appears to be about protecting the guilty. Prove me wrong. We'll be doing a court roundup looking at Westwood, Brand and Mangione. And Marjorie Taylor Greene has resigned, which is a pity. And I'm questioning, is Candace Owens safe? Plus your shout. And we'll end the show with looking at life through fresh eyes. Excuse me, I'm already spitting into my mic. How are you all? And good morning from Belgium, says Havan Stratton, and says there are none so blind as those who cannot see. Indeed. And extraordinarily, the idea that you put that quote, when we are looking at life through fresh eyes, I love that. How very timely indeed. How are you people? How are you, Glennis? How are you, Lisa? And hi. What? Red Pill Fox has had his YouTube channels deleted. I'm saying his. I'm assuming you're male. I shouldn't do that. Hello from Norway, Marianne. Absolutely love the fact. Morning all from Liverpool. Gary, busy stuff in Liverpool tomorrow. Let me get to it. Lovely to see you too, Merv. If I can stop just like tripping over my words. I'm so excited to be here. I do love this show. I actually love it. And it's so much more exciting that I created it. So that's just lovely. Right, this week. So today, MPs will get to grill Samir Shah and Michael Prescott on their work at the BBC. Now, Samir Shah is the BBC chairman and Michael Prescott is a whistleblower. Michael Prescott is the former external editorial advisor to the BBC editorial guidelines. And it was Prescott who leaked the memo regarding the BBC editing of President Trump's speech in an episode of Panorama. You know what they did? They took two separate sides of the speech and they edited them together, cutting out 50 odd seconds in between. So it made it sound as if Trump was involved with the Capitol riots. Fairly egregious stuff. And that led, of course, to the resignation of Director General Tim Davie, not a moment too soon. And BBC News Chief Deborah Turnus, both of them, I'm sure, will have got a very nice handshake out of the building. And they'll go on to other things as well. There's no doubt about it. They just need to be moved on from there because the BBC's Royal Charter is up for renewal in 2027. Which means that there's a question mark cast over the idea of BBC licenses, as there should be. I tell you what, MPs should actually be opposing the BBC license, but they won't because they rely on the BBC for promotion. So that's part of the problem. Plus, today, the COVID inquiry starts its third stretch and it will begin hearing on economic interventions. Would that include furlough? Would that include paying out massive chunks of money to middle class people so they could stay at home? While very working class people were out there on the front line and not getting paid massive amount of people. I know at least two people who managed to have loft extensions on the back of the money they were being paid to stay at home during C19. Yes, indeed. And also today, hearings will begin for over 100 people charged with supporting Palestine action. That's going to be interesting. And going back to Liverpool, remember that awful crash that happened on the Championship League? Well, Paul Doyle goes on trial tomorrow over the Liverpool FC parade crash. And I think that's going to be interesting. And tomorrow, the High Court will hold a full judicial review in challenge to the Palestine Action proscription. So that's interesting. Today, people are in court charged with supporting Palestine Action. And tomorrow, there's a judicial review which is challenging the illegality of it. Kind of sounds a little bit arse backwards to me. Wouldn't it make sense to challenge the illegality and then see whether it's actually worth putting these people in front of a judge? But I'm not a judge. And on Wednesday, of course, you can see it all on the front pages, although it's less of interest to me, just because it always works the same way. And that is Rachel Reeves will be delivering the autumn budget. Let's see what she has to say. Apparently, there's a targeting of middle-class people. I'm shocked. Would that be the same middle-class people who got so money during C-19? Who knows? And you know what? The COVID narrative, the whole thing is, so what we have, obviously, is the UK COVID-19 inquiry. Scotland have a separate one. And this is about examining the UK's response to and the impact of COVID-19. And so what we've had Module 1 report, which was published July 2024, and it found that the UK's preparedness was seriously flawed with an outdated strategy and a failure to learn from past exercises. And this week's, or rather it was published, it will be published last Thursday, I think it was, Module 2. And this report concluded that the response by the 4 UK governments was often too little, too late, with the chair, Baroness Hallett, making 19 key recommendations. And what really disturbs me about this is true propaganda in action. And don't be in any doubt about that whatsoever, because rather than question whether we should have locked down at all, that's off the table. You see, an inquiry can only find answers to what it's been asked, the terms of reference. And the terms of reference here is all about solidifying the C-19 narrative. And my thing, of course, about this and about a multitude of other things is tell a lie and make it big. And that absolutely could apply to C-19. And so what we have really is a BS outcome, which is based on a BS inquiry. And the official COVID narrative is set. And the idea that our failure is that we didn't lock down soon enough is a heinous one. The truth is we should not have locked down at all. And what they're doing is they're moving the goalposts so that we all have this kind of consensus in our society that C-19 was a very real thing and everything around it was a very real thing. And the only problem would have been government incompetence. Absolute outrageous. But then the COVID-19 inquiry could never have been about finding the truth, because if it was about finding the truth, we'd be having a Nuremberg. That is the reality. But what is absolutely great, and I did a post yesterday on social media, and Strong Angel said this, and it really resonated with me, and that is we are finally getting to identify and assess the number of the criminals involved. We cannot let them get away with this criminal governance. And so what you have are kind of media hags like Carol Malone, who is like, the COVID inquiry is a monumental waste of taxpayers' cash. It has 2 questions to answer. Did lockdown work? And what do we do if it happens again? It answered neither. It just wasted 200 million of our money to bash Boris. I saw Carol Malone the other week in Kingston. I didn't realize it was her until she was practically upon me in the high street. And she had clearly she was like staring at me like a missile, and she was all smiling. And I was like, and she then put her head down and carried on walking past. Carol Malone, Maloney, however you pronounce her name, is a columnist. She also works on GB News. She's absolutely heinous and horrible. And honestly, she wrote articles like this: for God's sake, have booster jab now or you'll kill people. So really, we should have an inquiry how these media hags were so complicit and that they failed on the first rung of journalism, and that is asking questions about a government narrative. They never did. None of these people did. No, not properly. No, they didn't. And so they're still running along with it. But not me, not us around here. Yes, heaven no. Carol Moron, says Red Pill Fox. Right, we're getting started in good order today, as indeed we should. But yes, that's what they're doing. They've solidified the narrative that there's no question in their eyes that we had a pandemic. That's their point. That's their position. And the question only is, did we respond appropriately? Now, the thing is, I don't think for one second that like Boris Johnson was really in charge of anything, but because he was prepared to put his face to the project, he should be absolutely held responsible. I have a whole raft of people: Chris Whitty, Matt Hancock, Boris Johnson, that idiot who did the modelling. What was it? Neil Ferguson. Professor Pants Down, as they called him, because he knew it was so duff. He was still meeting his mistress during lockdown. Lockdown harder is the new excuse, Dilip. It is. It absolutely is. Awful, awful people. They are the imbeciles used as mastheads, says Shug. Yes, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I saw a meme on social media about the correlation between countries that refuse the C19 jab and presidents assassinated. So I decided to fact check it, as you do. Here are the presidents in question. And it said that only 3 countries in the whole world refused to allow the COVID shots into their country. All 3 had their presidents assassinated. And it claimed to be the president of Burundi, the president of Tanzania, and the president of Haiti. And actually missed out one more, which is North Korea, although that president wasn't assassinated. But that they were the only 4 countries in the world who put up any serious resistance to C19 jabs. And so I fact checked it. And it's interesting stuff. President Pierre Nkurunziza, who is the president of Burundi, or at least he was until the 8th of June 2020, he died in a hospital. His cause of death was a heart attack. So a question mark over the assassination, but it was widely suspected, according to Wikipedia, that he died of COVID-19. There's a nice little narrative, right? So that's one president. So yes, that president did die during C19, and he may well have been assassinated, but they put it down to a heart attack. Next president, President John Magufuli, who is the president of Tanzania, or rather was until March 2021, when he also died with heart complications. It's getting interesting, right? And interestingly, he was also said to have contracted COVID-19. Little bit of a coincidence here. And then there was the president of Haiti, Jovenel Moïse, and he was actually assassinated in 2021. And what had happened was Haiti had initially refused to take the AstraZeneca jabs, and they were very concerned about the idea that there may be blood clotting as a side effect. But yes, Jovenel Moïse was indeed assassinated, the 48th president of Haiti. And North Korea, no, nobody's been assassinated. Well, not in recent times anyway, and not to do with the C19 jab. But they did absolutely refuse it. And actually what they said was that they were very concerned about potential side effects of the jab, and they preferred to maintain strict border closures as its primary control measure. Shug said there was also another attempted assassination caught on camera. Tell me what it was, people. Tell me what it was. And an attempt on Madagascar president as well. Tell me what it was, and I'll happily fact check it. The thing is, I appreciate all manner of people are trying to rewrite the whole C19 history, right? So you have people like Carol Malone, you have people like Piers Morgan. These were absolute sellouts. They're not journalists, they're churnalists, they're prostitutes. Or no, prostitutes. That's what they are. They're prostitutes. Anyway, so I appreciate that all manner of people are trying to rewrite it. And then you have like Reform, who are like trying to look as if they're all over it. They're on top of it. But you see, I have, as I said before, more receipts than Tesco, right? And what I really care about is when I see a political group like Reform trying to refashion themselves as the defenders of COVID truth when they were fulsome promoters of it. Do you not believe me? Well, then look at this. This is Dr. David Bull and Richard Tice of Reform. And this was them in 2021 discussing the jabs. Have a listen.
Things I'm very worried about. One is the low uptake of vaccine by BAME communities, and we just really need to emphasise to them that this is really important.
Yep.
And the other thing is about caregivers. They really must be vaccinated, because otherwise they're putting elderly and vulnerable people at risk.
Well, it's absolutely critical to their job, surely. I mean,
it is.
I don't see how they can do the job if they're not prepared to be vaccinated.
And of course, you see in the UK, we don't believe in compulsory vaccination. Now, you can argue whether that's the right or wrong thing, but the one thing I will tell you is there's no way you're travelling abroad without a vaccine, because the airlines are going to demand it, and so are other countries.
But there are many jobs where actually a certain level of training or ability is required to do the job. And surely, if you're going to be a care worker, then you must be vaccinated in order to protect the residents.
Yeah.
These people are culpable. I will not allow them to refashion themselves as freedom fighters. They are absolutely responsible. And when we finally know the true amount of caregivers who were murdered by the state because they were coerced into having jabs, then people like Richard Tice and Dr. David Bull will be held accountable. Absolutely, they will. And there is no excuse for Dr. David Bull. He is, as the title suggests, a medical doctor, for goodness sake. An absolute resounding failure. How dare they? Did you, Iggy? I'm a care worker. Refuse the jabs. More power to your elbow. Yes, no one's flower. It absolutely destroys Tice's credibility completely. Absolutely it does. And did you note the groups that they were interested in going after? They wanted black and brown people and carers. And this whole idea of you can argue whether there should be mandatory jabs in the UK. Do one. Just do one. I will never trust people like this. They are absolute sellouts. Yes, they are. Disgusting people. Yes, disgusting people. What? Health Freedom UK's mum had 3 heart attacks and 2 stents later. My goodness, that's awful. Good morning to you, Paul. And protect the residents of care homes. They neglected tens of thousands are elderly in care homes to death. Yes, they did, Bainesy. I interviewed people throughout C19 who were quite literally on iPads as their loved ones were dying in care homes. It's shocking, absolute shocking what was allowed to happen. And I will not forget and I will not forgive. So there you go. Simple stuff. Never forget, never forgive. No, can't afford to. I cannot afford to as a journalist, because if I do any of those things, then it gives them some kind of free will to do it all over again. So it's just important to know who's who. That's all it is, really. And talking about knowing who's who, here she is, Cruella de Ledbetter, also known as Kim Ledbetter. She's a Labour MP, and she is not happy. The assisted dying bill, of which she as a backbencher is pushing through with as much haste and pace as she possibly can muster, it is falling. It is falling. It is failing. It is dying, actually, for want of a better description. And what's happening is that the bill, which was passed by MPs in quite a historic vote in June, it must be approved by both houses of Parliament, which is also the Commons, which is the Lords. And peers are making very, very slow progress in scrutinising it. And she is really not happy, because they were in there on Friday and they were doing a line by line reading, as you must do in something like this. But she wants speed. She wants haste. And peers so far have discussed fewer than 30 of the amendments. And there's a lot of amendments to consider. It rose above 1,000. Love it. I love the obstacles that are being placed in the way of this woman. You know why? Because I don't trust her. I don't trust her reasoning. And I read out a letter last week from a viewer who is pro assisted dying. And I also understand the rationale for some people for that as well. But the problem is I don't trust the people who are running the show, because I saw what they did with us during C19. So they will get rid of anybody they deem useless eaters, i.e. people they consider not contributing to society, because their idea of what contributes to society is not the same as mine. Anyway, what was great, of course, was a similar bill to the one that they're trying to push through did not make it through the Lords in 2014. So there is hope. Although, just to say, unlike Ledbetter's draft, it had not previously been approved by MPs. But Ledbetter said she was concerned about the Lords potentially trying to block this bill. She said, I welcome scrutiny from the House of Lords and respect the important job they have to do, but we must work together to ensure the terminally ill adults bill passes through Parliament in a timely fashion to give dying people choice and dignity in their final days. Go away, Kim Ledbetter, go away. We all know why you're in Parliament. It was a sympathy vote after your sister was killed. And the protests, have you seen them over the weekend? They ain't going away. They are not going away at all. And the problem is, of course, is that what this is about, this was in Crowborough, in East Sussex. And the Home Office planned to move asylum seekers to a military site on the edge of Crowborough by the end of next month. And they're saying it's going to be about 600 migrants in an army camp as the young cadets there face being forced out. Now, when I say that the government are going all out to prove us conspiracy theorists right, the reality is people have been saying for an awful long time that a lot of the men who are coming in on the small boats are of fighting age. And now the government are putting them in military camps. They have previously as well, by the way. But now it's like it's an open thing. They did it undercover before, but now it's open. And so what's happening is people are taking to the streets. You see that woman there. She's holding her banner, 600. And honestly, this is it's quite outrageous what is taking place, right? Because even if you are pro-immigration, the unfettered access to our country, the no borders, is really not acceptable for anybody. There's really no country in the world where you can do that. And England seems to be open all and not protecting people. And it is problematic. And so at the moment, the site apparently is being patrolled by dogs as they prepare to kind of bus in the asylum seekers. But I just think it's so interesting that people like me and others, excuse me, itchy eye, people like us were saying these guys are fighting age, fighting age going up and being put into military bases. I think that is interesting. And if you live in England, I'm sure you'll have remembered this. On this day in history, 11-year-old Robert Thompson and John Venables were convicted of the murder of 2-year-old James Bulger. Absolutely horrendous details of which I will not go into, so graphic. But honestly, what these two little boys did to James was actually, I think, satanic. I think it was wickedness personified. And Venables and Thompson were jailed for life following the murder of James. They were released in 2001 and given new identities. John Venables is back in prison. His parole was rejected in December 2023. He's due another review no sooner than next month. And information about his specific current location is protected by a lifelong anonymity injunction, which applies to both of them. And I once visited a man in Pentonville prison who had been convicted of putting out details about John Venables. And a number of people have been convicted for it, although not all have been in prison, but this man was. And poor little James, he was, I mean, if you don't know the story, it's so sad. It could really happen to any of us. James was with his mum. His mum was in a shop, like the local butchers knew well. James was outside. The boys came along. They took him away. They did such heinous things to him on a railway line that essentially his body was incomplete by the time he was found. It was unbelievably wicked and evil. They tortured him beyond anything imaginable. It was really quite shocking stuff. And do you know what, Shug? I think they were possessed. I can't see any other way around it. It was Mel's. It was chilling and quite unbelievable. And for Brits, it was just really shocking that could happen in our country. So shocking that they would do that to these two little children. Anyway, John Venables has been proven over and over again to be somebody who is not safe amongst the British public. He's been arrested. He clearly has a problem with children. He clearly has a problem with child abuse images and more such like. Possession is real and an absolute nightmare for his poor mum, Denise. Yes, Joanne, it's really unbelievable. I mean, I do really believe that poor Denise, and you've seen her over the years, how broken she is. And you see that top picture where Robert Thompson is leading little James away. I don't know if we'll ever get over that. Curly Crew said, James was the same age as my brother. I remember my mum cried for 2 days after they found his body. What's that? Shug, are you on my own stream? I describe an attempted possession on myself as a child. Took me decades to figure it out. Shug, send me a link to your stream and I'll plug it. Just awful stuff. Awful, awful, awful stuff. Rest in peace, James Bulger. And I do hope that poor Denise and Ralph, his dad, will at some stage be able to find some peace. I hope eventually they're all reunited, frankly. And who's enjoying the whole big fallout from X? I'm loving it. X is absolutely, undoubtedly, formerly Twitter, the biggest propaganda platform out there. I've been saying it for the last year that many of the accounts which claim to be Israeli accounts are actually run from India. And it's just because Elon Musk monetized the platform. So they're prepared to say anything. Anyway, it's all coming out now. It's great to see. Many of these political accounts which claim to be pro-Israel or pro-Ukraine Ukraine are actually based in India. So what you have, for example, the American First one posted a picture of a white woman with a white child, trying to fool people into believing that that account, American First, was run by a white woman, a MAGA white woman, but it's actually run by a Indian man, a brown man, not a white woman. And but also what's interesting was for a period of time, and I think he might still have done it, is that when it was becoming, Elon Musk is absolutely a Zionist and he supports all of that. So when it was becoming abundantly clear that all of these so-called Zionist accounts were actually being run from India, suddenly they paused where the location was. I wonder why that would be. But we've been saying it for the longest time around here, and it's absolutely wonderful to see it happening. And I saw, for example, that one pro-Scottish independence account, I'm having difficulty getting my words out today, one pro-Scottish independent account was actually being run from the Netherlands. So a lot of people are claiming very much to be in one country when in fact they're in another. And they're doing it, well, for who knows? They're doing it for propaganda reasons. They're doing it for monetary reasons. Most of the British Patriot accounts are Indians or Nigerians. I mean, I think it's kind of funny in some respects that, because a lot of those Patriot accounts are so racist. So I think it's kind of funny that these Indians are actually weaponizing the racism against racists and getting paid for it. But it's good to see them all being exposed. It's not okay. Now, before I bring in my first guest, which is not here yet, Facebook has banned Paul Carden. I'm permanently banned from X for posting anti-Zionist stuff, said Bainesy. New keyboard, says the Blue Nomad. I see. Okay, got it. Have we all caught up with this? I've become quite a fan of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, I'm sure there's a million things that I wouldn't like about her, and probably she wouldn't like about me. But in recent times, I think she's been really coming into her own. She's been exposing the foreign power that has taken over the American administration. But she has been a firm and solid ally of Donald Trump for a very, very long time. But now she has resigned. And it's just horrible. Donald Trump called her a traitor. Donald Trump is a narcissist. So as soon as anybody goes against him, he has narcissistic injury. And I see it a lot in my work. So I have to deal with narcissists that if something doesn't go their way, then they get so angry and they have to attack you and they have to smear you. That is Donald Trump through and through. And that's who he is. That's the kind of person he is. So he's really come out and he's lashed out at her. But in recent times, Greene has become very vocal, as I say, about foreign power taking over the American administration. And she ain't lying. And she's also become very vocal about Donald Trump's less than transparent approach to the Jeffrey Epstein files. In fact, he called it a hoax. And now he's been forced to sign a bill to release them. A hoax that he's now having to release. And honestly, you don't need to be that savvy or that up on news to understand that Donald Trump's reluctance is to do with his very deep and long-standing relationship at one time with Jeffrey Epstein. That's clear. And so Trump has repeatedly lashed out at Marjorie Taylor Greene recently, and he withdrew his support for her re-election. And then he posted on his social media site that she had chosen to quit rather than face a Republican primary challenger in the midterm elections next year. He reiterated that she was a traitor while also thanking her for her service to our country. Does that make sense? How can you be thanked for your service to a country if you're a traitor? Well, you can if the person saying it is an orange idiot. Yes, I'm in that kind of mood today. He's an idiot. He's a dangerous idiot. And I feel for her. I really do. And many people were convinced that she would actually win the re-election. But the issue was clearly that this woman was frightened for her life. She even said so. She was receiving so many threats. So were her children, because she was coming out against Trump and Israel. And that is problematic. It's certainly problematic in England, and it's certainly problematic in America. And that was what was happening. And that's why she decided to quit. And more power to her elbow, frankly. Charles says Marjorie Taylor Greene is a unique set of politicians who pursue truth and not simply an ideology or money. She has not received a penny, has she, from the Israeli lobby, which is fantastic to see. And I do ghetto. I remember that when Donald Trump said he'd lock up Hillary Clinton. Well, the problem is if he locks up Hillary Clinton, going to have to lock up himself, right? And MT Soul, let us not forget, given that we've just been discussing the fake C-19, let us not forget that Trump, far from being a freedom fighter, is, as MT Soul says, the godfather of Operation Warp Speed. Never forget, never forgive, never, 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 never. Politicians are nothing more than professional liars. Kara said MTG liked Israel. So she liked Israel, but it's interesting now that she's come out against it, which is very interesting. Like I say, I'm sure there's a ton of things that her and I would absolutely disagree on, but her stance against foreign power taking over the American administration and her stance about transparency around Jeffrey Epstein, she gets the big thumbs up from me. Big thumbs up from me. Blue Nomad, Trump is totally cold. It absolutely is. If you say to the MAGA people, even if you said to them now, well, I have irrefutable proof that Trump really is a pedophile, which of course I don't. I'm not saying that. I'm just using that as an example. But if you said that, they would find a reason around it. They'd find some semantics. Look what Megyn Kelly did the other week, that she managed to find that it wasn't that it's not the same, is it? Raping a 15-year-old as it is a 5-year-old. That's kind of their stance, right? That's what they do. They juggle the truth, but not around here. Oh, no. Oh, no. We are only interested in the truth. And it doesn't matter who it ticks off. Right. They gain the whole world at the cost of their soul, says SMG. That is very profound. Let us bring in our first guest because she's here. And she's like me. She likes a good bitch. She does. Right. Here she is. Tania Edwards. How are you, Tania?
I've just hustled into the house off the school run. I've never bitched about anything in my life, Sonia. What do you mean?
No, never. Hey, listen, your hair looks fabulous. How come you look so glamorous after the school run? I used to look like I'd been dragged through several hedges backwards.
Well, to be honest, Sonia, I've got 2 pairs of trousers on. It's so cold outside.
I know.
I just raced into my house and put on I've thrown together at the last second. But thank you so much for having me. It's interesting hearing you talk about the news, as I don't watch it anymore, and because I think it's feeding on our energy. I think it's all parasitic. Even when people get into the debate about the semantics, really it's about how absorbed you can keep an audience in theatre, especially now that so many people are turning away from it, realising it's nonsense to preoccupy them while people get about their business. But it is very clever how engaging it all is. It's curious, but the longer you don't look at it, when you pop back in and see anything of it, it seems more and more absurd. If I switch on the BBC now, I wouldn't, but if my husband was watching it, it's like seeing a cartoon. It's fascinating, really.
Yes, it's totally unrelatable. What I like to do as an intro to the show, though, is take mainstream media stories and show it our way. what's
Yes,
really going on. So we look at, for example, the C19 inquiry. Now, this was something that you spoke out about even during when it was happening. You were one of those people who was prepared to do that. A lot of them aren't, but they're all trying to rewrite history. So you have people like Piers Morgan and Carol Maloney and Reform. They're like defenders. They're defenders of the situation now. And it just makes me absolutely sick. Doesn't it make you want to chuck when you see people rewriting history, Tania?
Well, I think we have to distinguish between history and the play. So it's quite clear, if you remember I can't remember which stage it was, but it was when everyone had to capitulate simultaneously to the vaccine. So you had the high-end Lord Sumption explaining why he had to give way for the pseudo-intellectuals amongst us. And then you had the middlebrow Peter Hitchens, who also explained why you had to surrender to the vaccine. Then you had the even lower middle, well, not even middle now, scraping the barrel, Julie Hartley-Brewer explaining why you had to surrender. And you realise that those people that were ostensibly on our side or were even cynical or sceptical about the situation were actually just playing a part. And they were all ready to basically lead as many of the people that might have said no in the wrong direction at a pivotal moment. And I think it's curious, obviously, you know, I've worked a lot with Bob, but I think it's curious that he, I think, was given his platform to engage as many people as possible in the idea that lockdowns were obviously bad. He was clearly passionate about it and he pursued that relentlessly. But then he was just supposed to segue neatly into marketing the vaccine in his pictures. And it was the fact that he wouldn't do that led to him being let go. And I think that he took people by surprise. I don't mean us. I mean the powers that be or the people that are funding this advertising or the people that are designing these campaigns. I think that it was a genuine surprise to them that he didn't just start marketing it like everybody else did.
Exactly. That's Bob Moran you're talking about. And we're going to get around to Bob shortly because you've obviously got something very new and exciting that you're doing with him. But I think it all plays into the same thing, really. And I did admire Bob being prepared to stand up and be counted because he was very, like me, part of mainstream media and he was at the Telegraph. And it's always difficult to, you know, come out against the dominant narrative in the establishment that you're part of. And he did, and it was absolutely wonderful. So that was really good. What do you think when you see, for example, this? For God's sake, have booster jab now or you'll kill people, Carol Malone. And now she's like, oh, they've spent 200 million of our money just to blame Boris. What do you think when you see something like that? And be careful what you say. Obviously, we're on YouTube, so be careful about the jab stuff.
Okay, so I obviously think that these people are beneath contempt. And it was interesting when you were talking about being within the mainstream. Obviously, as a stand-up comedian, you're always supposed to be on the outskirts, on the periphery. So it surprised me in my industry that people sold things in this fashion. Once you realised how cynical people are and how desperate they are for any kind of attention, how absolutely devoid of any moral compass. And interestingly, I read something about pacifism the other day because I was curious about why no one is seeming to object to slaughter. Just as an idea, as a principle, people seem to be reluctantly or compliantly bloodthirsty at the moment. I think that sometimes when someone's really put out by something, perhaps they go along with it even more keenly, as if just to get it over and done with, it will end it sooner. So obviously these people that you can see in the public eye are appalling wretches of the earth. Yes. And they will continue to profit from having absolutely no sincerity. Their lack of depth and their lack of intelligence and their lack of morality will steer them steadily towards all of the rubbish that they need. But it's of no interest to me. I think it's extremely good that you have the patience to show up the hypocrisy. But it makes me despair.
Does it? I mean, when you say it makes you despair, what are you actually despairing at?
I despair of the idea because most of these things are put there in the public forum to persuade people, many of whom I love and I'm deeply close to and I haven't fallen out with, that the system works and is self-correcting. So the greatest delusion of all is that we're in a functioning society with checks and balances, that these things are organic developments, that this inquiry was genuine. And has a purpose beyond justifying a lie. And these arguments and these exchanges and these debates to suggest to people that that talk itself is meaningful, and that has there's a purpose to taking an opposite side to someone, as if that's a function of democracy instead of a pretense. It's a lie. So I despair that people believe that our system is going to self-correct.
I think, see, now that's brilliant, because obviously what we have is this situation where we're apparently a consensus society. We all seem to be agreeing on the same things, but we don't. I mean, that is the truth. But the problem is that they own the media. They use our money to buy propaganda. And so that has been a real big issue. But I think that we've actually done a really decent pushback, actually.
Also, most importantly, and I think this is the most interesting thing about the pushback, to have this consensus idea, which is basically the notion that conformism is noble. Conformism is not noble. No one has ever been interested either in a narrative story or in any kind of mythological event or any kind of myth or story or faith. No one has ever been interested in the person that conforms, just agrees with whatever the mass around them says, is completely disinterested in the nuances and sensitivities of life. Those people are uninteresting. And in order to have this mass formation, we were persuaded as a group, as a nation, as one among other nations that were being persuaded the same thing, that this war mentality, this bestial idea that you're just part of a crowd, we were persuaded that that was something noble, to walk like an animal into a just to be moved around and to sit in your spot and to be tagged and distributed in this way, to be told when you could eat and drink and socialize and meet with people. We were told that that was a good thing. The best thing I believe about what you're doing and these other people that have stood out is that you're making non-conformism interesting again. People are remembering that they didn't want to be part of that streaming mass. They didn't even want to hear about it. They already know what all of those people are doing. And it has taken individuals to stand up and just be more interesting than this constant deluge of rubbish. And I think that that is the place that we are winning. I think that the characters that have come through in the last few years are more interesting than all of the Julia Hartley Brewers or they are put together. And that will tell over time.
I love that. Tania, if done on purpose, they won't apologise. So Drumstick said you're 100% right. And also Fred reminds me that Italy apparently had bodies in the streets. I mean, the stuff that they did, the falling down in China and everything. And the only reason I'm raising that all up now is obviously because we've just finished the second module of the UK COVID-19 inquiry, and it's all over the news. And so they've reframed it. The reframe obviously is the issue of we didn't lock down soon enough, rather than we shouldn't have locked down at all.
But we all knew that before it even started.
We did. And we didn't need £200 million of our money to be able to find that out. This to me is, and people get concerned when I say things like that, because they're like, are you alleging corruption? But this to me is only ever about solidifying a narrative so that they can then move forward and nobody will be held responsible. But I see the UK COVID inquiry as protecting the guilty.
Of course, without a doubt. And quite openly, and I think that there is so little obfuscation of this point. It is so clearly theatrical nonsense. It is so clearly not addressing any of the actual issues, which was that every single thing done was absolutely appalling. If you remember, the nurse has been given Care has been given an April Fool's deadline to go ahead with coerced procedures against their own persons. If you want to look at how outrageous and cynical that whole thing was, this is flagrant mockery of us. They're not pretending. Exactly. You're supposed to see that this is corrupt. That you're not supposed to imagine for a second it's a genuine attempt to uncover or improve anything. Even the premise of it suggests that the whole pandemic wasn't in any way a fabrication. So on every single level, this is endorsing the narrative. And it's supposed to make a mockery of our side, and it's supposed to disillusion and demoralize our side because of its outrageously brazen mockery. I can't think of an alternative word.
I mean, mockery is as good a word as any. That's exactly what it is. And it's even more of a mockery that it's our money that is used to send us into great fear and to imprison and enslave us. So, but you see, the thing is, I mean, I am thankful for a lot of what went on in terms of the people, like you say, the people who came through. Now, I wouldn't necessarily have known of you and Bob had it not been for your stances during C19. So that was absolutely brilliant. And then, of course, there was Bob's show. You've been involved. I came to the gallery where Bob was. We did a live stream from there. And so what we've seen is wonderful art and wonderful creatives also coming through, because there's nothing like a situation like that to really make certain people tune into who they really are and what they have to offer the world. And that is what you're doing. So let us get to your new project, right? So the title of it, very interesting, because I am notoriously somebody who doesn't like people who are pedantic, right? They drive me absolutely insane. Okay, so you've got this new project which is called The Pedant's Revolt. Now, to be pedantic, is it pedant or pedant?
Pedant.
It is pedant, like a PEH, even though it's PED. Right, got you. So, show about language and pedantry that you've made with Bob and his father, Tom Moran Sr. Tell us all about it.
So when we were working on Art Apocalypse, which was obviously ever so serious, we sort of fell into this. It was quite strange. One day, Bob said to me something like, "Oh, it really irritates my father when people say research instead of research." And I said, "Oh, yeah, okay, then, whatever." And a few minutes later, I thought, wait a second, why did he say that? Is it because I said research instead of research? I didn't even know that it was supposed to be research. Anyway, as the months of working on the show continued, there would be all of these little things that would come up. I once corrected him on either, because he said either, and then he went and checked it with his father. And Paul Handy, who wrote the music for Apocalypse, we'd had this idea, Pedant's Revolt, which would be a sort of word game where two people kept correcting another character. And we talked about it on and off, and Paul gave me this fantastic jingle for the series. And obviously we've all been busy on other things. We're doing the exhibition. I'm on tour with Alistair Williams at the moment. But I saw Bob's father and I said, I owe you a script. And I thought he'd say, don't be silly, you don't have time for all that. But he said, oh, is that still happening? So a few months ago, everyone started pouring into my house on a Monday. Paul Rodriguez, who films Comedy Unleashed at Backyard Comedy Club, he's producing it. He's been absolutely fantastic. So there are 6 episodes. It's ostensibly about language, but really it comes down to 2 really irritating characters that keep correcting the normal person, who in this instance is Bob, who is losing his mind. And there are going to be 6 episodes released. We put 3 out already. They're each 10 minutes long. And the show that I want to plug is on Tuesday, the 16th of December. We're doing a massive Christmas show at the Backyard Comedy Club in Bethnal Green. And it will have, it's part of the show itself. So we'll have the quiz. Everything's going to be Christmas themed. We know a lot of musicians. They're all getting involved. Paul Hanley's going to be on the keys. Anna Rayner's on the saxophone. Everyone's leaping in on the guitar, even Paul. And I have a wonderful classical pianist friend who's involved, and her opera singer husband. So it's a massive Christmas-themed shindig with also lots of jokes and this grammar show. And I think that the reason I became fixated on it was because it's all very well saying to other people, oh, stop looking at all of the theatre and the media and the nonsense, but where do you put your focus? So in my life, I've put it on my children, obviously, and in learning music. And I've started reading about these debates that people have been having, which are pretty much the same ones that we're having now, but they were having them 150 years ago. And it's very interesting to see when people were less concerned about other people's opinions and were more emphatic about getting their own views across, the distinctions in language and how important these tiny details were. So the fact that in our characters, we're not even necessarily right, but we're firm, it's proving really a funny piece of work. And it's lighthearted, but probably quite serious, in as much as that's where it begins, isn't it? Language and its disintegration. And all the old teams back together. And I really think that the Christmas party, I do hope you come, Sonia, the Christmas show is going to be really stupendous.
Sounds great. So I started by saying that I hate people who are pedantic, and simply because I routinely bastardize the English language, like on a regular basis. And I think in part, I spent so long in America as a music journalist. I was there once a month for almost 10 years. And I think that I picked up a lot of the pronunciations in America as well. And so you say, for example, either, there you go. So say, for example, either or either, right? So, but does it really matter? That's the thing. Does it really matter?
Well, honestly, if you do a show like this, you lose the ability to speak altogether. So when my friend Jodie's on the phone to me now, she starts to panic. Recently, I said lapel instead of lapel and rudimentary instead of rudimentary, because obviously, if you become fixated with this stuff, you corrupt your own process of thinking, and it becomes impossible. And we've actually made mistakes. If people listen to this show, they'll notice some things are actual. Some things we're in error because of where we live. So it's not necessarily a blanket error, but it's an error between ourselves. And then other things we have just totally got wrong. And someone corrected my friend Tim Price. He started Unlocked TV in the Unlocked Television. Sorry. He started Unlocked Television in the lockdown. He's come in and done a part. And someone's questioned his Latin pronunciation, and he's defended himself vigorously. So obviously we're taking this all lightly, but I do think it's interesting, and I do think that we are suffering a diminished vocabulary by our lack of interest in words.
Right.
It might be ridiculous to put. Obviously, we're mocking, we're satirizing the idea of taking it too seriously.
But that's the deeper point, isn't it? That is the deeper point right there that you're talking about, is like the disintegration of language. And that's, I think, do you see what I'm saying? That's clearly a valid point.
Yeah, so we're obviously satirizing the idea that two people could be this annoying and be allowed to get away with it. Obviously, that's the joke. But on a deeper level, the idea that people can't communicate or even find the intricacies of the thought that they're trying to express because they don't have the tools anymore, even in their own mother tongue, I think that that's valid. And also, more separately, it's quite interesting, the origin of these words or some of these idioms, or how you should use what where. It's good. It's been really good fun. I've read a lot of grammar books that I wouldn't have otherwise read, and I still don't quite grasp everything. But
is there a class issue here? And I say that because obviously you were talking about kind of more localized wording, and so that you will have that as well. You'll have people's accents, their regional pronouncements of, I call it pronouncement, you say pronouncement, right? So there you go, right? So exactly that. But so there'll be regional differences as well. But ultimately, aren't you talking about a type of English language that really is part of the upper middle classes?
Well, that's what's been so fun, because I know so many different characters. I have all of the classes. So my friend Colin, who would certainly consider himself working class, has just done a cameo opposite Nicholas Lord Munson, who would certainly is an aristo. And my friend, the classical pianist, is a Russian. Her husband's Mexican. Bob's father is obviously, I consider, highly educated and is incredibly intelligent and hugely amusing. But he would say almond and I would say almond. And it's these distinctions, I suppose, that we are also making sure we include, because the pedant themselves, they can be annoying wherever they are and whatever class they're in. That is a universal characteristic, and it really doesn't matter. So in my family, my mother was always correcting my father, who found it intensely annoying, but it doesn't, whatever family unit you're in, one person will be correcting you and there will be one person that you correct. And in that respect, you can't possibly blame any one group of people for this, because it's a character trait that we're all guilty of in certain situations. And hopefully, to prove that everyone can be this annoying at some points, we have enough people being so. And it is the joke. But just because
I get it.
Yeah.
No, I get it. It just sounds like a lot of fun, and I will try and be there. I do know that I think I've actually got a Christmas lunch that day, so it might not
steaming.
Yeah, well, that might be the problem, really. So, but it does sound fantastic. So, everybody, the 16th of December at the Backyard Comedy Club. I think I've already put a link in the description for tickets. Not a problem. But there's something else that you're doing this week. I had a brief conversation with Jake. You're involved in, I think, to do with the portraits. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Let me have a look at it. Rivers of Blood, the Righteous Brothers, Rivers of Blood. And they are running an exhibition this week, 28th of November to the 4th of December at the Truman Brewery, 19 Hanbury Street. And Jake had invited me, and I couldn't actually go, but he said that I think you're hosting. And I said, well, that's incredible coincidence, because she's on the show tomorrow.
He did the most fantastic portrait of me. Really wonderful. And that will be presented to me, I think, on Thursday. And I'm hosting the event. He's doing a podcast called the 1,000 Words Podcast, which is just starting to collaborate, I believe, with UK Column. He's a really fantastic guy, and it's the opening night of Thursday, and I'm hosting that. So yes, we're doing that. Then on Friday, I'm in Chichester with Alistair on our tour. I think we've sold out the Chichester date.
Oh, go you.
So lots of fun things are happening, but definitely come along to the Truman Brewery and check out Jake's stuff for certain. And come and see Alistair and I at Battle. I think that's our last date of the year that we have tickets for in Sussex.
How's that been going? Because you and Alistair both came on before you did that show, those shows. How's it been going? What's been the responses?
It's been really interesting. We didn't know where our audience was until we started. So we've done fantastically well in certain places. And obviously, the longer you go on, the better you get. He is absolutely on fire now. So we've had a really good time. I loved Ireland, loved Scotland, loved Newcastle, actually. We're going to be putting a bunch of new dates for the new year. So we're going to be back in Southampton, London. We're going to Bath, I can't remember. It's all on my website. But yeah, we're having a lovely time. He's so funny and nice and excellent guy to work with. And the audiences that have come have been really wonderful. It's been a lovely time.
Your vibe is lovely this one. Your vibe is always lovely. That's why I let you come back on again, because I enjoy chatting with you, because you're one of those people where we don't even need to kind of like prearrange that we're going to discuss this or that. I think I literally just said something like, we'll have a spontaneous conversation, because you're one of those people that I feel comfortable enough doing that with, and knowing that you've always got something to say. And by the way, there's some lovely comments here. One, let me read you this. Tania, you are lovely, and your husband is a very lucky guy, says Soldier. And I mean, making assumptions there, Soldier. We don't know Tania's sexuality, although we do know she has children. But no, I take your point. She's laughing. All good. Lovely to see you. Absolutely lovely to see you. And do remind me prior to that December date, and I'll give it another plug as well, Tania, as well. And do take good care of yourself. Have a lovely week. Very lovely to see you today. Everybody, this is the very lovely Tania Edwards. And I have no clue whether she's married or not. But I do know that she is pedantic. Take good care of yourself, Tania. Lots of love.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. What a pleasure. She's a sweetheart, isn't she? She is a sweetheart. Yeah, I do. I absolutely destroy the English language. I mean, it's just a fact. And part of the reason is because I see words before I say them. So I see words phonetically. So I tend to, and I go like that because it's like at the front of my mind. So I tend to pronounce, although I say pronounce, words according to how they are spelt. And I think English is one of the most difficult languages. Extraordinarily difficult. Before we bring in our next guest, he's yet to arrive, I want to talk about the evil that trans do. Wes Streeting, the health secretary, hundreds of children, some as young as 10, are going to be jabbed with puberty blockers. It's an NHS-backed experiment. And there's as many as 226 children. And I'm actually horrified by this. Wes Streeting, when he came in as health secretary, he was like, no, it's unacceptable. We have to be careful. They are experimenting on children. It's outrageous. It absolutely should be halted. The CAS review was very clear that there were problems with puberty blockers. We had people, for example, from the Tavistock, who were given platforms on BBC to say that puberty blockers were no biggie. It was like, just pause. And then when you stop taking them, puberty resumes. That isn't what happens. There's a real problem. So the youngest patients in the study will likely be 10 or 11 years old. It's being led by researchers at King's College in London. The maximum age will be 15 years and 11 months. One group of 113 will be given puberty blockers for 2 years, while the other half will be given the drugs after a 1-year delay. Both groups will be followed up for 2 years, meaning it will be 4 years before any results are published. Let's hope they're still alive. Let's hope those children are still alive. This is absolutely, unquestionably outrageous. It's being funded by NHS England. It's backed by King's College London and the South London and Maudsley NHS Foundation Trust. Around 5 to 6 children will be recruited every month from the beginning of the new year. Now, parents, carers out there, if you allow this to happen to your children, then you are negligent. And I do hope at one stage you will be held to account. You are the barrier between what they want to do to your children and your children. Use it. It always shocks me. One of the reasons that I started covering the whole trans issue 6-7 years ago now was to do with children, the attack on children, this whole idea of making children believe that they were born in the wrong body and that they could have healthy body parts cut from them in order to kind of have them simulate the opposite sex. And the idea that this was some sort of ground up campaign was absolutely ridiculous. It's very much a top-down one. Certainly in America, there are billionaire males claiming to be women who have been financing this, and they are autogynephiles. Autogynephiles we've talked about before. That is the whole idea where these people are aroused by being considered the opposite sex. So it is a fetish. I don't care what anybody says, but it's also a very serious psychological condition. These children have been brainwashed. It's that simple. When you see children on YouTube who have been transed by their parents, it makes me feel quite violent. It really does. The study is likely to cost about £10.7 million. Like, we don't have better uses for that. What about putting that into correcting issues of poverty, of which we have plenty? Really shocking stuff. The thing is, I should have known this about Wes Streeting, because let me just tell you a quick story about Wes Streeting before I bring in my next guest. And that was in 2019, I was involved in an article for the Mail on Sunday. And the article was about Wes Streeting, now our health secretary, being involved in a secret Facebook group that was doxing people like me, including me, doxed me. And it was run by a trans-identified male who was in labour, a young man, and LARPing as a woman, and had been pushed to the forefront of Labour and appeared in pictures with like Angela Rayner and Jeremy Corbyn. And Wes Streeting was part of this secret group. And they were quite literally doxing anybody who was raising questions and concerns about what were happening to children under this whole guise of transgenderism. So it's a real problem. I can't believe that they're doing it. I actually thought that after the Cath review, which clearly showed there was a problem with puberty blockers, and after the Supreme Court ruling, all of that, I thought things would change, but apparently not. They're marching ahead, because honestly, this was really, I mean, it almost is never about protecting society. It is about furthering agendas. And Mel's wants to know, is Streeting tipped to be the new Labour leader? Yes, he is. He is one of the people, along with Angela Rayner. Robert says, 666, stop them now. If only we could. If only we could. And it makes me feel so powerless. And actually, the next subject we're going to discuss also makes me feel powerless. But hopefully, I'm going to be feeling a lot more empowered after we've had that discussion. Let's do it now. Yes, Cameron, that's right. BBC Children Need Charity Fund trans programs in Scotland. Absolutely. BBC are absolutely culpable in brainwashing children via their children's output, that children are born in the wrong body. So hopefully one day these people will be held to account. But it ain't today. Sadly. Let me welcome in my next guest, Dr. David Hughes. How are you, David?
I'm very well, thanks, Sonia. Good to be with you again.
Absolutely wonderful to have you with us. As you can hear, I'm frothing at the mouth at what's going on, because there's so many inequalities, iniquities, and just outright problems at the hands of these awful globalist shills that are in our government. And the topic that we are going to discuss is probably one of the most pressing of our time in many respects, because the issues like the transgenderism, that's very much part of the culture war, which, as some people are quite right, it is a distraction. Do you find it to be a distraction, the culture war?
Well, for me, it's all part of the Omni War. I mean, kind of scrambling cognition, trying to mix up basic things, male is female and vice versa. And it goes back to Orwell in 1984, doesn't it? Black is white and so on. This is all done by design, and it's dangerous.
It certainly is. So we are here today to talk about the digital state, something that is also done by design, which is dangerous, which makes many people feel empowered. I think from the get-go, I would like to discuss with you about what we currently have as part of an infrastructure, and what people like you and I are potentially doing to push back against that. So how far into digital ID have we already gone, David?
It's difficult to tell, because I think a lot of this is taking place behind the scenes. There are also obvious things that the public is being presented with, such as the whole debate in the UK recently about shouldn't we have a digital ID. And on the surface, it looks as though that's a healthy and robust debate to have. But to come back to your original point about Parliament being full of shills for the globalists, as I think you put it, something remarkable happened last month when there was an e-petition which attracted, I think, 2.85 million signatures, which is 4% of the UK population, including children, saying no to digital ID. And what was the response of the government to that petition? It simply ignored it. So
haven't they now agreed to have this fake debate on the 8th of December? I think they have, and which will go nowhere. It will be the same as the other debates that they've had on geoengineering. But it's kind of like a sop to make us believe that we're being listened to. Do you hold much in store with petitions, David?
No, I don't put any stock in them at all. In my COVID book, in chapter 3 there, I go through at least half a dozen, probably more, e-petitions which reached over 100,000 signatures during COVID, against masks, against lockdowns, against injections, and so on. And if it goes over 100,000 signatures, then it triggers automatically a debate in Parliament, or so you might think.
Right.
And all that actually happened each time was that a group of maybe 6 to 8 MPs got in a small room together. They had a chat for about an hour. Nothing substantive was discussed. And at the end of it all, the government just reasserted its position. So for me, petitions are futile. They just get ignored.
Right, got you. So let us talk about this. I know that you have also interviewed Ian Davis about his book, The Technocratic Dark State. Excellent work that he's done there. And you have also done incredibly important and excellent work in this arena as well. So in terms of it, digital ID, a lot of people want us to believe for some reason in the UK that digital ID is a consequence of like people like Tony Blair, and Tony Blair is putting out a report tomorrow from his foundation. But this is a global project, isn't it? And that's what people need to realise.
Yes, I mean, Tony Blair has been at the heart of this for many years, of course. Well over a decade ago, he was campaigning for a national ID card in the UK. So it's no surprise to see him back. And he was very active during COVID, actually, around this issue as well, before he got his knighthood. But you're right, it is a global issue. And one of the things that's happening is that they're trying to build out similar projects in different countries under different guises. But ultimately, the key word here is interoperability. And this is a word that Blair has used repeatedly, because if you can achieve interoperability between the different systems that are being built in different countries, regardless of how different they might appear, then de facto what you create is a single centralized global system in which all data about you, about your financial transactions, etc., can be placed on a single global ledger. And this is actually in keeping with the original writings of the technocrats back in the 1930s, when they first came up with this image of technocracy, which is the model that they are now trying to move us towards on a global level. And we see it playing out, for example, in the Bank for International Settlements concept of a global unified ledger. And so we mustn't be fooled by the appearance, for example, of different looking digital currencies in different parts of the world, stable coins here, central bank digital currencies there. Ultimately, it's very clear that the whole thing is about creating a single global system of digital control.
How close are we to an all digital financial system? And again, it goes back to, because I think that a lot of that infrastructure is already in place. And as you say, a lot of it is just happening behind the scenes and we're not aware of it. But how close do you think we are?
It's a very important question. And I asked myself the same question. I think probably the best evidence that I have in terms of a timescale has to do with publications by the EU.
Right.
At the start of this year, it was talking about a pilot project for an EU digital currency completing in October. So that will have finished by now. But an additional document says, okay, now that that's done, we're looking at a rollout, hopefully, well, for them, hopefully, in 2029, which of course is in line with the Agenda 2030 idea. So based on that, I'd say we're looking at just 3 or 4 years now.
Wow. That's see, it's terrifying, isn't it? So I think most of Wake Up viewers are absolutely aware of the influence that these technocrats have, for example, on Donald Trump's administration. Indeed, I doubt that he would have got in without their backing. They were all there at his inauguration, and they are essentially in charge of his administration. PayPal mafia, as they're often referred to. So how much are they impacting us in the UK? But again, if it's a global thing, I guess whatever impacts them over there is going to impact us over here.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it's the same project everywhere, isn't it? I mean, Palantir, we know in this country, already has its hooks in the NHS,
right?
Which is enormously problematic when you think about healthcare data, medical data, being transferred to a firm like Palantir. You mentioned Trump. Palantir has been awarded major contracts with virtually all US government agencies. And the point about a company like this, and there will be probably similar companies operating elsewhere, is it's not just about hoovering up all of the different data. It's about making the data from different branches of government, again, this term interoperable, so that everything can be linked together. So you might think, for example, that your driving license data is held in one place, your medical records are held in another, your tax records are held in another. But ultimately, what's happening now is that all of this is coming together to enable a system whereby all of that data about you will be available at the click of a button, which is frightening. From when you think about what a surveillance state is able to do, we've now reached through this new technology, particularly the rise of AI and the role that is now intended to play in governance. We can talk more about that, but essentially outsourcing decision making to computers, to algorithms. I mean, it's the complete opposite of democracy, actually, and it's a very dangerous thing.
I mean, you just mentioned it there, so let's bring that in, and that is we're essentially moving away from a public government to a private governance scenario, aren't we? And who's involved in that?
Well, I mean, all of the major players, I mean, certainly the big tech companies are central to this, but what again is so disappointing is to see our politicians just meekly surrendering to all of this. And again, Trump is probably the best example. I think you're right, he was probably deliberately installed. But a lot of deception has been involved. And for example, his concept of techno-populism, trying to kid millions of Americans, and successfully in many cases, that this kind of new technology pioneered by Musk and Thiel and so on is doing the Americans a favor. It's making government more efficient. We should welcome it. You know, less bureaucracy and all of the rest of it, shrinking the state till you can fit it in a bathtub, to quote Ronald Reagan. All of these kind of methods have been used to sell it. And actually all that's really happened is that companies like Palantir have been put right next to the heart of government. They've been able to hoover up all of this information. Everything is going digital. And it's deeply problematic, especially when you link it to other developments. For example, the rise of the digital state in Ukraine. This is a very interesting outcome of that war. Of course, the war was about many things geopolitically, but one of the key outcomes has been the announcement in early 2025 of the Ukrainian digital state. And to me, it looks for all the world as though Ukraine has been the test bed for actually bringing these so-called digital states into being and into practice and proving its viability. And when you look on the website all about this Ukrainian digital state, it's modeled as something for other states to emulate all over the world.
Right.
And it's said to be this great thing because it's kind of war resistant. You know, Russia invaded and still, you know, companies like Amazon Web Services and Google swept in and helped the Ukrainians. And, you know, kind of there's this amazing propaganda where Ukraine even awarded those private companies peace prizes. And so the idea is that we have this kind of resilient new system now that's all digital, and we should welcome this with open arms. But of course, all it really means is the end of democracy if it's rolled out.
You know, with the advent of the internet, I still love the internet, by the way. I just want to preface that, because I think it's amazing. I can talk to people all over the world. I'm talking to you now, and all that stuff is really brilliant. And I don't think for a second that the technocrats bargained for the degree of unity that the internet would necessarily create. And obviously now they're trying to do everything they can to pull back from that, right, by introducing these various laws, online safety act, all around the world, and we know that. So it's become increasingly obvious to me that our world is becoming more narrow and smaller. And you talk about a rule by algorithm, and when I read that, I was like, that is exactly what's happening. It's almost like, if you are part of that, and an awful lot of people are, millions are daily, if you're part of that, you're all now thinking with the same mind. Will you expand on that for me, the whole idea of rule by algorithm? Because I think that's something of great concern.
Yeah, I mean, I would draw to your viewers' attention a white paper published in May this year by an organization called the Global Government Technology Center. Now, this is a new organization set up by the World Economic Forum around 12 months ago. And this white paper is titled The Agentic State. So this is going beyond a mere digital state. This is about AI now. And it's all about handing over human agency to AI and algorithms. Now, the way that it's sold is that it's all about system stability and preventing crises. And supposedly we live in a world of polycrises where, global warming and terrorism and pandemics and all of these terrible dangers, which all turn out to be manufactured, of course, or nearly all, they create this kind of very precarious state of existence, and it's all too much for humans and governments to respond to kind of in real time. And so therefore what we need to be able to do is to outsource rapid decision making to AI, which of course is monitoring everything and everyone, and will know the best response. But it gets quite frightening when you read that document, because it talks, for example, about, quote, rewriting laws like you can rewrite code.
Wow.
Now, what a proposition that is, because really what that's saying is that law is no longer the kind of product of a careful deliberation of a legislature and, carefully protected by the judiciary and all of the rest of it. It's just something which can be rewritten on the fly, depending on what the computer thinks. So there's no real place in this kind of a system for democracy. There's no real place for the will of the people. Parliaments serve no real useful function. Instead, everything will be run directly through, as you mentioned, private interests. And ultimately, it will be those who control the algorithms who will control society.
You sent a sort of list of, for want of a better description, buzzwords to me in order for us to have this discussion. And some of them I just wasn't familiar with, or I can tell what it's about. So one example, automated killing. What is that about?
Well, the obvious example there is drones. And if you look at a company like the Israeli company Elbit.
Like the pagers and stuff you're talking about, aren't you? Are you?
Well, not quite. That's another interesting example. But this company Elbit has what's called a Lanius drone. That's the brand name. And it's marketed in terms of being able to take off, fly, find its bearings, locate a target, might be a building. It can then find its way in through a window. It can accurately find a suspect to kill. It can kill them. Although in the marketing it says human intervention is required at that point to give the decision, and then come out without anybody really realizing that anything has happened. Now, over 10 years ago, people were warning about the dangers of the kill decision ultimately being taken by a robot, because there's just so much data to process. There's multiple imperatives kind of strategically, militarily kind of pushing in that direction. And I think we seem to have arrived at that point now. And unfortunately, places like Ukraine and Gaza do seem to have been the testing ground, not only for facial recognition technology and
Got you.
biometric checkpoints, etc., but also for this horrific new kind of direct killing by algorithm. So this is very frightening because, again, it's my contention that what's happening in Palestine really is a microcosm of what could be coming for the rest of the world if these kinds of technologies are allowed to take center stage. And there is a long tradition historically of what Kees van der Pijl, a former international political economy professor, calls the information liquidation model. And you can go back, for example, to the Holocaust and IBM's role in helping to systematize and facilitate the Holocaust. You can look at the role of information in Operation Phoenix in Vietnam in 1968 in terms of identifying the key leaders to take out. You could look at the war on terror and the role of information there in terms of identifying suspected terrorists, much as you would identify, people to market a brand to in the business world. But the point is, in all of these cases, computers and information can and have been used to render killing more efficient. So to the extent that this war on terror, so-called, is now starting to come home to Western societies, you can see that there will be no place for dissidents. I mean, that's an extreme. It wouldn't even need to get that far if they can bring in the digital currencies and the social credit scoring, etc. But this is truly dystopian stuff.
It really is. But you say there'll be no place for dissidents. Will there be any place for humans at all? Because one of the kind of like originators of AI, his kind of prognosis was, when I first listened to him maybe 5 years ago, he was like, no, it'll be fine. It will just aid and assist people. It will be like your own CEO. That sounded great, right? Really good stuff that you don't have to necessarily, you can't afford it. You don't have to bring in staff. You can do all these incredible things. But now the most recent interview that I saw with him, he was saying, look, other than like journalists or people who have to actually think, jobs that require people to think, most everybody is going to be out of a job. What do you see? I mean, is AI all bad, David?
No, it's not all bad. I mean, there are certain tasks which it's very useful for helping with. I understand, for example, in the IT industry, it can really accelerate tasks and create much greater efficiencies. The problem comes when you start trusting the welfare of society, the strength of the economy, and the decision making of governments to AI, because it can't be trusted. I mean, that's one point. Who's actually monitoring the trustworthiness of this information? Ursula Edgington in New Zealand submitted a freedom of information request regarding the New Zealand Parliament's use of AI. And she asked, who's actually double checking that this is being done right? I think it had to do with writing up the minutes or proceedings from Parliament. And she just simply asked, well, who's checking that it's being recorded accurately? And the answer was no one. Just blind faith. Now, I mean, that's a relatively harmless example, but we're seeing this more and more, that this kind of blind faith is being placed in this technology as though it's this, kind of wonderful thing which is going to accelerate everything. But it's actually very, very dangerous, and it does lie. I mean, just another simple example. Just before I left academia, this is when the wave of AI hit higher education, and out of nowhere, about 2.5 years ago, I was suddenly hit with a whole cohort submitting AI generated essays. And one of the many shocking things about that to me, when I realized what had happened, was the reference lists, because it generates perfectly formatted references which look authentic, but then you go to check them and you find that they're completely made up.
Oh,
so
wow.
AI will lie when it suits AI to do so. So there's absolutely no reason at all why we should trust it. And that's before you get onto who's programming the algorithm.
I was just going to bring you to this, right? Because this is so interesting. Did you see what happened with Elon Musk the other week, where he's obviously programming Grok?
Yeah.
And suddenly Grok has him portrayed as somebody who could outpace Mike Tyson in a match, that he's fit and lean, where we all know that he's not. And it was extraordinary. It's portraying him as some sort of Greek god. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. We have to be deeply concerned, don't we, about the people who are programming them. Tell us more about that.
Well, I mean, there's plenty to say there. I mean, for a start, it means that you can't really trust anything on social media.
Right.
You don't know how genuine it is. You don't know, how the extent of shadow banning and so on. I mean, it's all. I think of social media as a kind of social containment mechanism more than anything else. It kind of
Well
kettles
said.
and silos people. So you think you're out there and you're kind of having great debates and so on, and really you're kind of shouting into the void. Now to come back to Grok, it has a new so-called assistant in Japan called Annie. And this was introduced in the summer this year. And it's currently the most downloaded app in the whole of Japan. Now, this assistant, Annie, is blonde-haired. She has pigtails. She wears fishnet stockings. And she's very flirtatious. Now...
It's just these incels' fantasies really just come to life in their programming, isn't it? But yes, go on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that's been known about AI as it's become more influential has to do with loneliness and psychosis. So these technologies are rendering people more and more alone. I mean, this has especially been true since 2020, of course, the kind of digitizing of loneliness. And people are starting to interact with AI as though it were real, and that they're being lost in it and kind of detaching from reality. And AI can make them believe, that they're gods or that AI is a god. It encourages people to come off their medication. Quite dangerous things. It's told children to touch a live plug with a coin. Lawsuits have been brought in the United States by parents where AI has recommended the best suicide methods that their children have then gone on to use. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we're dealing with now. When you think about lonely men, I guess in particular, primarily in Japan, and they're chatting with this flirtatious chatbot called Annie, and it's designed in such a way that the more detail and information that you reveal about yourself, and presumably at this point we're talking about private fantasies and sexual content and so on, the more clothes Annie will take off until eventually you can reach lingerie mode. Now, think about this. This means that people, to get that far, are probably giving away the most confidential and intimate details of their life to what? To AI. And what we know about AI is it's actually being weaponized against the population. The population is being gamified. It's being made easier and easier to exploit. And meanwhile, people are becoming more and more addicted to these apps and to these devices. I mean, it's almost like carrying a mini casino around in your pocket, isn't it?
That is the problem, right? That is the problem, our addiction to this thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, the kind of the constant scrolling action, it's a bit like the, reels on the slot machine, isn't it? And all of the kind of the bright colors and the buttons and everything. And that addictive quality, people never leave it alone. They keep going back and back and back for more. And you're not feeding it with coins as you would a slot machine, but you are feeding it with all of your data. And that's what they want. That's what's being hoovered up. That's what's being put into the algorithm ghetto. So it's evil genius, the way that this has all been designed. And my biggest worry is that so much of this goes through the smartphones, and that the kind of a number one point of resistance would be ditching smartphones. And actually, nobody can do it. In interview after interview, I ask, is there anybody out there who's owned a smartphone since 2020 and has been able to ditch it? And after months and months of doing this, I'm up to 4 people now. And that to me shows, the kind of the bottleneck of the problem.
That is a huge problem. And I know it's a huge problem for me, because even though I've turned off everything I possibly can to stop any external interference, I'm still using a smartphone. And I feel I need to in my job. My job enables me to do so many different things at once. I could be checking WhatsApp and sending emails and responding to, just so much. I've literally got my office in my hand. And it's almost, I feel almost like I've been coerced into this moment. And we have, haven't we?
ensnared, I would say.
Yeah,
The World Wide
ensnared.
Web, the
Yes.
internet, very gradually been brought to this point. And there's a difference between addiction and dependence. And many people have become dependent on their phones because, as you say, often for business reasons. They might not be able to do business without it. It may come to the point in the UK if my bank, Barclays, requires an app to be able to use a bank. What am I going to do? I mean, you can keep running to other bank accounts in the hope that they won't do the same, but you can see that the net is tightening. So even I've got away with it so far, but I can see an imminent future in which basically everything has to have apps and therefore smartphones. It's dire.
Absolute dire. Let me read you some of these comments. Great comments. Dark Side of the Moon said, this is a great discussion. It's a necessary discussion. I'm so glad that David is here with us to have it, really. And Fred said, using it to work is different than pleasure. And I get that as well. I have actually, since August, I've changed my online habits. So I will only go on X essentially twice a week now. And that is to promote this show. Because the impact it had on my mental health was not good. And I was monitoring myself. So I started very slowly by coming off for 1 day a week and noticing the difference in myself. And I don't know if you heard Tania Edwards earlier, but she was talking about how she now doesn't watch any legacy media. So when she, for example, perhaps might log on to BBC News, she suddenly realizes how much propaganda is coming at us, because you do, don't you? Once you distance yourself from it. So I'm trying to do those sort of steps. But it is really hard, David. It's so hard. How can we have an effective pushback against this?
Well, I mean, ultimately, the broader thing to remember is that we collectively, as the people, have the power, and that technocratic agendas are not implementable without our consent.
Right.
And the problem is that we keep giving our consent away. So, if people would just stop using smart devices en masse, if there would be a mass pushback against, for example, smart meters, which are known to be harmful to human health as much as anything else. Anything smart is a problem, because really what smart means is facilitates technocracy.
Right.
And technocracy is a form of totalitarianism. But it requires people to understand what's happening, first of all. And there is a problem with a lot of people still being, in inverted commas, asleep, despite everything that's happened since 2020 and the various forms of attacks on them. And so reaching those people is very important. But again, I think it's about getting up and active and actually doing something. And we all have different gifts and different skills that we can bring to this resistance. Some people are very good at kind of, going down to their local councils and causing a stir there. Other people, with yellow boards or whatever may be your skill set, whatever you've got to give, even if it's just talking to people, friends and family that and just gently kind of nudging them, or giving them books or publications or whatever.
Each one teach one.
The key thing is you have to do something.
Talk to somebody in the queue at Tesco when you're refusing to use the self-checkouts, or anything like that at all. Thank you, David. I really appreciate it. And I highly recommend your Substack. There is a link in the description, people, to it. And before you go, I want to refer to to your book about COVID-19, the psychological operations there, and the war and technocracy, which is extremely popular. But I think it's particularly pertinent now because all of those elements have all come together. We've had the second module from the COVID-19 inquiry as one example. Obviously, the onslaught of technocracy, which is coming towards us. But this is obviously a fight, but that's a brilliant piece of work, clearly. And talk a little bit about it.
Well, thank you very much. And one thing that I think 2025 has vindicated has been the core argument of that book, which in a nutshell is that the so-called pandemic was not a genuine public health crisis. It was a military psychological operation that was designed to harm the public and debilitate the public and confuse the public, so that the public would be less able to see and resist what is really happening, which is that a war is being waged against it. I call it an omni-war, waged in all domains of human life, clandestinely where possible. And the war aim is the dismantlement of liberal democracy and the rollout of a novel form of totalitarianism globally, which is technocracy. Now, one of the things about the digital state and why I was keen to speak about it today is that, those are quite vague concepts in some way. Technocracy ideology goes back to the 1930s. What we're seeing this year in particular are the very practical and pragmatic steps being used to implement technocracy. And how exactly is this being done? And I would recommend Ian Davis's book, The Technocratic Dark State, as probably the best book out there at the moment on what's happened this year. But it's all being rolled out, and it's all being rolled out really fast by design. And if we don't stop this in time, the prospects for, well, not just us, but for our children are very, very bleak. This ultimately amounts to a biodigital control system. Ultimately, it's a slavery system.
It is. Pushback works. I'm in no doubt about that whatsoever. Yeah. I've seen all manner of things change as a consequence of it, but you need to be serious about it. But each one do whatever they can, essentially. So, David, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us today, as ever. Is there anything else that you feel regarding this that went unsaid today and that you'd like to add?
No, I think we've covered all the key bases. Thanks, Sonia.
Thank you very much. Excellent work. Excellent work indeed. David, thank you. Don't let your hearts be troubled. I'm just reading some of the comments there. David, take good care of yourself. Have a brilliant week. Lovely to see you. David Hughes, everybody. Wonderful. Wonderful. He is brilliant, brilliant mind, very clever individual. And I very much enjoy talking with him. Right, kids. This is happening. Thank you, David. Great chat, says Fred. Little by little until you have no choice. And that's the problem in SureTech, is that it just creeps up on you, doesn't it? But pushback does work. Brill guy, thanks, David, says Summer Breeze. And we got to get rid of the spyware in our pockets. Jane, I know, I hear you, sister. Great chat, says Lisa. Going to re-listen and share this segment, says Mels. Thank you. Thank you, Mels. Thank you very much indeed. Right, I just want to bring our attention to these three people. They are, of course, former Radio 1 DJ Tim Westwood, Luigi Mangione, and Russell Brand. I just wanted to give you, I get quite a lot of emails saying, what's happening with these people and their court cases? Well, I have to be careful because all these people have been charged. And so these are live proceedings. And so I will be extremely cautious in what I have to say. So we will just start with Luigi Mangione. He is, of course, accused of the assassination murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And Luigi Mangione, there's been this issue with his socks. It's really weird. But last week, he was granted the use of 5 pairs of socks for an upcoming hearing. So the suggestion is that it will be a 5-day hearing. And that starts next Monday, December the 1st. That is not the trial. But this will be the first time that he will be in court for more than a day. And it's likely to extend from the 1st to December the 5th. He's fighting prosecutions in 3 jurisdictions. And that includes in Manhattan, where he faces murder charges in federal and state court, and also in Blair County, Pennsylvania, where he faces forgery and firearm possession charges relating to his arrest, which followed this sort of 5-day manhunt. And the December hearing, so starting next week, will comprise essentially of 2 separate proceedings. And that is, in the first, the defense will challenge and the prosecution will defend how police in Pennsylvania elicited statements from Mangione during his arrest in a local McDonald's. And Mangione's lawyers argue that he was not read his Miranda rights warnings until 17 minutes after they began asking about his identification, his possessions, and what he was doing in the fast food restaurant. And in the second proceedings, both sides will fight over the admissibility of the evidence which was seized by Pennsylvania police. And according to prosecutors, Mangione's possessions as he sat in the restaurant included a black backpack containing a 9mm ghost gun, and with a metal barrel and a 3D printed trigger and pistol grip. And prosecutors say that this was the weapon used to murder Brian Thompson. So we shall see. That is going to be very interesting proceedings, and not least because Luigi Mangione has become something of a cult hero figure for many people who absolutely loathe and detest the private healthcare insurers, of which Brian Thompson was the CEO. So it's very interesting. He receives love letters, love hearts, all manner of proclamations of love towards him. The other person to look at here is Tim Westwood, somebody that I knew from my hip hop days. And we weren't friends, just to be very clear about that. He's been bailed over rape charges. He appeared before Westminster magistrates on November the 10th, charged with 4 counts of rape. He was also, in addition, charged with 9 counts of indecent assault and 2 counts of sexual assault. 3 of the accounts of indecent assault are alleged to have taken place in BBC studios in the 1990s. Tim Westwood was granted bail, rather. He has not yet been asked to enter a plea, but he has previously denied claims of misconduct. His case will next be heard at Southwark Crown Court next week on the 8th of December. And so, again, very interesting. As I say, he was released on bail on the condition that he does not contact any prosecution witnesses. And then we come to Russell Brand. I see that Russell Brand has pulled back from podcasting, presumably in preparation for his trial, which is scheduled to start in June 2026 and is expected to last between 4 to 5 weeks. Brand faces 1 count of rape, 1 count of indecent assault, 1 count of oral rape, and 2 counts of sexual assault. The alleged incidents involve 4 women and are reported to have occurred between 1999 and 2005. And Brand has consistently denied all allegations since they first emerged in a joint investigation by the Sunday Times, The Times, and Channel 4 Dispatches in September 2023. So that's really all I can say about that. But that's an update as far as I can go. But as I say, it's live proceedings, so I have to be incredibly careful. And I asked this question: should we be concerned about Candace Owens? And I say that because she put out this extraordinary tweet. Have I got it? Can I bring it in? Extraordinary tweet in which, there it is, in which she says quite clearly, 2 days ago, I was contacted by a high-ranking employee of the French government. Anybody seen this? Anybody seen this? Right, let me just continue with that. And she said that after determining this person's position and proximity to the French couple, which is the Macrons, who are suing her for defamation and other issues, she said, I have deemed the information they gave me to be credible enough to share publicly in the event that something happens. In short, this person claims that the Macrons have executed upon and paid for my assassination. Yes, you read that correctly. More specifically, that the green light was given to a small team in National Gendarmerie Intervention Group. I am told there is 1 Israeli that is on this assassination squad, and the plans were formalized. Now, given what we saw happen with Charlie Kirk, and given that Candace Owens has actually been exposing a lot of the subterfuge and issues around Charlie Kirk's death, I do think that there is reason to be concerned for her safety. She says, again, this person provided concrete proof that they are well placed within the French government apparatus. Further to this point, this person claims that Charlie Kirk's assassin trained with the French Legion 13th Brigade with multi-state involvement. And she also talks about how journalist Xavier Poussard, who her work into the Macrons, and in particular Brigitte Macron, and the allegation that Brigitte Macron was born male, and that draws on the work of Xavier Poussard. And apparently his life is at risk. It's deadly serious. She said the head of state of France apparently wants us both dead and has authorized professional units to carry this out. I ask that every person retweet and share this. Well, that's fairly astonishing stuff, that an American podcaster is making allegations that she has credible information that the head of the French state has put a hit out on her. That's extraordinary stuff. Extraordinary stuff. And InsureTech says, keep an open mind, but not so open your brain falls out. Of course, because you have to be careful with somebody like Candace as well. And I know that she's very kindly promoted me before, but you do have to be careful with names that have been pushed so much to the forefront, and they can say so much, and they're not subject to like shadow ban or, you know, being removed from the internet. You always have to be careful about that. And Teeb thinks Candace is fantastic. Robert says, I tend to believe, but ? Gobsmacking and puzzling, says Humphrey. Indeed, isn't it? Right. Let me come to some of your shout. This is interesting. I talked about Medhamsley the other week. Medhamsley, of course, was a detention centre for young males who had only carried out very petty crime, but they were subject to torture, to sexual abuse, to being whipped, all manner of awful things under Margaret Thatcher's short, sharp shock policy. Well, I received an email from Philip who said, hello, Sonia. Well done for continued research and investigative journalism on all matters. I listened with sadness to your piece on Medhamsley Detention Centre, knowing there will never be a root and branch full public inquiry into what happened there and probably every other detention centre that existed around that time. I was a victim of abuse whilst in a junior detention centre for 14 to 17-year-olds. It was 50 miles away from Medhamsley in the next county of Cleveland, as it was then. I was age 15. And looking back now, I really was an innocent young boy in every way. Having a severe speech impediment made me a huge target for bullying and abuse, not from the inmates, but the staff. And then he goes on to talk about Operation Magnolia, which was set up by Cleveland Police in 2014 to investigate the abuse in Kirk Levington Detention Centre, which is situated just outside the market town of Yam. Although many people have come forward, he says, many more have not and will not. One former prisoner told me, I know it was bad, but I just want to forget about it and get on with my life. Well, bully for him. A lot of these lads who are subject to this abuse and torture cannot get on with their life. Some of them have such arrested development that even 30, 40 years on, they cannot recover from it. And Philip goes on to say that one of the things that has really alarmed him about these so-called inquiries is the approach of solicitors and compensation payments. He said the emphasis seemed to me to be about getting signed up for a compensation payment, which I've personally felt uneasy about and refused to register with any solicitor and have not put forward a claim for compensation. Over the years, the inquiry team have been in contact with me, and in one phone call, the tone was a little strange, with the investigating officer assuming I had made a compensation claim. You see, part of the problem is about compensation claims is they buy silence, and that is the problem. And I understand exactly what he was saying. And then he talks about how he had also received a phone call from another officer on the team who wanted to come out and see me with some forms to sign. The forms were to accept compensation. And I strongly felt that by accepting compensation prior to any convictions of those prison officers after my evidence and that of others would be diluted. And I absolutely agree with you, Philip. And he says, 11 years down the line, I see no end in sight, despite getting monthly updates on changing outcomes by telephone. I've asked not to be called anymore, just if there is movement one way or another. And God bless you, darling. It's awful, isn't it? They do this so often. You see one inquiry after another, and the truth is always impacted with compensation payouts and settlements. It is. Now, I'm not making judgment on people who feel the need to receive compensation payouts or settlements, because sometimes people cannot take any more. So I get that. But we must also be aware that what happens in these situations is that silence has been bought. And that is a problem for many people, including myself and including Philip. So more power to your elbow. But again, this is not to look down on anybody who's accepted compensation. Sometimes it's a necessary thing. I get it. Greg, interesting. I believe that part of being given a vaccine damage payment from the government is that you are not allowed to talk about it. Are you not allowed to talk about it? That's fairly egregious. Yeah, gagging. Absolutely. Stephen cannot forget about Thatcher's short, sharp shock treatment. She should have been subjected to it. So Awful stuff. They used to beat us at school, says Cameron. And a public shout out. Does anyone know how I can contact David Noakes or his wife? I shan't say why, as it may get me in trouble. But if you know who he is, you know, right? Any contacts at all, which could lead me to where David Noakes or his wife currently is, would be greatly appreciated. Please send them to me at soniapoulton@sky.com. Sorry to hear that Music Realm was abused. Sorry to hear that. So many people fold for money. It's sad. Money is evil, says Fred. And I just want to say thank you as ever to my wonderful donators, Catherine S, to Helen O, to Jade T, to Merv W, to Peter B, to Susan R, to Merv. I already said Merv. And thank you, Soho B, on the chat today. Thank you. I love you too. Says, love you, Sonia. You are our shining light with your true journalism and humanity. That touches me deeply. And I appreciate you greatly. Thank you so much for your kindness. And thank you, Paul Trainer, also on the super chat, and Swiss Miss. Thank you too. You are all incredibly wonderful and amazing people. And thank you as ever to new people subbing. I appreciate you very much. And another public shout out. I want to give away end of year presents to my wonderful viewers, as many as I can. So if you have something to promote and you want to give some freebies away, it could be anything which is giveawayable, right? That is decently giveawayable. So that could be books, music, days out, gift bags, courses, whatever. If you're prepared to give it away as a freebie, I will promote it, because I want to reward my beautiful, beautiful viewers, because they're amazing. And I loves them. I loves them up to the sky and back again. Yes, indeed, I do. So thank you, Lisa. It's been a fantastic stream today, says Joanne. I enjoyed it. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Haven't finished yet. Nearly there, though. I want to end on this. It's about experiencing a fresh start or seeing life through a different perspective, through new eyes. So we've lived in our house for 6 years, and I'm currently undertaking a major redecorating program in the house. And the kitchen has been done, my bedroom's been done, part of the front room's been done. But we were doing the cupboards last weekend, and they're beautiful handcrafted cupboards that have been designed. They were here before us. They came with the house in the front room. They're absolutely lovely. But I discovered that there was something in them that I've never seen in 6 years, and that there are these sort of hidden, beautiful place lights. And I've never seen them before in these cabinets. And it's not that I don't clean in these cabinets. I do, although because they're cabinets, you don't have to dust very often, because obviously they're closed, so they keep the dust out. But I just found these lights. I was like, wait, what? And I just thought that's interesting, like when you see things in a new light. So I wanted to talk about that, really, and about how sometimes once you experience a shift in perspective, the whole of life looks different. And it can be something as simple as rediscovering a lost memory or a lost trinket, or discovering something that you didn't even know was there in the first place, such as me with the lights in the cabinet. And that was lovely. Stephen has so much clutter. Miss with a hiss is laughing. Yeah, I just like, what? Wait, what? So I just want to talk about that, about cultivating a fresh perspective and looking at life really through new eyes. And change always comes from within. It does not matter that there are massive industries out there that want to convince you that they are going to enlighten you. Every change of substance is from you. It's your own self-determination that this is what's going to happen. And a lot of that can be achieved by stepping back from, the marketplace, as it were. I've had so much clarity by not being on social media to the degree I used to be. Not only has it improved my mental health, but I have got more clarity. I've been able to improve my work, the quality of my research, my output in general. And that was because rather than constantly seeing life through a million other people's eyes, I just started to look through my own eyes. And that's really healthy if you want to be in charge of your own destiny as much as you humanly can. And the thing about cultivating a new, fresh perspective is it can make you look at people around you in a completely different light. And believe me when I say this, and that is, if people will not change around you. Once you have a new perspective, they have no alternative, because they are forced to change in their approach to you, because you are no longer reacting and responding to them in the same old way. And so it enables you to do that. And then once you start to get that new perspective, it will also enable you to challenge assumptions that have perhaps bogged you down for a long time. Some people say things about themselves which are really negative. They say things like, oh, I've never finished anything. I've never won anything. This is really negative stuff. You're winning at life, right? And the chances are that if you actually dug a little deeper, you would find that you have excelled at things that you haven't necessarily credited yourself for. Or if somebody has like been negative about it, it's made you look at it in a different light. But looking at life through new eyes, through fresh eyes, and that can be metaphorical. You might be blind, right, when I'm saying this, but you can still look at life through fresh eyes, you know, your mind's eye. And so it will cultivate an incredible new perspective for you when you're able to do that, because you will get an awareness of yourself, this self-observation that perhaps you might never have had before. You will see some habitual patterns about yourself, the way that you filter life, and it will allow you to see things as they are, not how your fears tell you, or how, I don't know, kind of like, yeah, because people have a lot of fears, right? They assume that everything that is problematic is going to be calamitous. It isn't necessarily, not necessarily. I came across a beautiful quote this weekend, which I don't have in front of me, but I'm going to just paraphrase it. And I think that speaks volumes. And that is, what if everything that made you feel that you were drowning was actually teaching you to swim? And I love that idea. And that's what you get with a fresh perspective, is you don't necessarily see everything as negative, but as a learning experience. And it will enable you to embrace the curiosity and wonder of life, because life is all of those things, but it can come a bit meh, right? Depending on who we have to deal with. I have to deal with some assholes, right? I do. I mean, that is just the reality of my job. Okay. And it's seldom pleasant, but because I've done so much inner work on myself, I can deal with them now in a way that generally amuses me. Any interaction with them, after it, I'm kind of laughing at how foolish they are. And then I share that with friends and we all laugh at how foolish they are. So enabling to see things through fresh eyes will enable you also to let go of the patterns that have been holding you back up to this point. And however you do that, engage with art, engage with nature, engage with anything of a creative disposition, and seek new enterprises. Okay, learn a new skill, travel to new places, help others. Volunteering is a fantastic way to see things through a new and different perspective. All of those things. Yoga is demonic, says his name is worthy. Randy says, I'm dancing. Am I dancing? Am I dancing? Be everything and nothing at the same time. Yes, love you all. Even the pissing haters. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Joanne. Plant seeds. That's right, Shaky Jakey. That's another beautiful quote, isn't it? And that is, they thought they would bury me, but they didn't know I was a seed. So again, look at life through a completely different and fresh perspective, because you are absolutely worth it. And these people coming up on my screen right now are my patrons at Patreon, and the details are in the link below. And I very much appreciate them. Wonderful stuff. InsureTech says, take the dog for a walk. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Merv. Thank you, Shin. Shin, I'm making it my promise to send you books in France before the end of the year. I promised you some, and I will get that done. I promise. And the opposite of depression is creation. Big love to you too, Colin. Big love to you too. And just to say, please don't make any comments in the chat, but we had a result from the Court of Appeal at the end of last week. And if you look in the description below, you will find my legal page and you will find information about it. I love you all. Thank you all for being here on whatever platform that you have received Wake Up, whether it is YouTube, whether it is Rumble, whether it is X, or whether it is Spotify. Thank you so much for being here. And whether you're watching live or on playback, I appreciate you so very much, very much. I will see you Friday. I've really had difficulty with my words today. It might be just one of those days. Hey, Mercury is still retrograding, right? So that might explain it, because Mercury messes with your communication and everything. Winning it at life. Love you guys. Love you so much. I will see you on Friday. Take care, everyone. Have a great week ahead. Lots of love to you. See you Friday, everybody.